The chandeliers glittered like frozen stars, casting a cold light across the grand ballroom. Laughter rippled through the crowd of the city's richest, their champagne glasses clinking in perfect rhythm. This was not just any night. It was the charity gala of the year, the place where fortunes were flaunted and reputations were built. At the center of it all stood Damien Mitchell, a billionaire whose arrogance filled every corner of the hall. His tuxedo was flawless, his smile sharper than a knife, and his arm was wrapped possessively around Roxanne Croft, the woman everyone whispered about. She was not his wife. She was his mistress. But just when Damien thought the night was his stage, the ballroom doors opened. All eyes turned as Ava Mitchell walked in. 6 months pregnant, dressed in a modest gown that couldn't hide the weight of exhaustion on her face, she held her head high despite the whispers. She was his real wife. The murmurs grew louder. Isn't that his wife? What's she doing here? Look at her belly. Ava had not come for drama. She had come because she believed her husband still cared enough to remember the woman carrying his child. She wanted to save what little was left of her marriage. She approached Damien carefully, her hand resting on her stomach. "Damien, we need to talk," she whispered, her voice trembling but determined. Instead of compassion, Damien sneered. "Not here, Ava. Don't embarrass me." His friend smirked. Roxanne's red lips curled into a triumphant smile. Ava tried again, pleading for just a few minutes, but Damien's pride had no limits. In one brutal motion, he shoved her aside with his foot, kicking her swollen belly. A gasp tore through the crowd. Glasses froze midair, cameras flashed, and the music screeched to a halt. Ava fell to the marble floor, her body curling around her unborn child, tears streaming down her face. The shame, the pain, the humiliation, all of it burned into her heart. Yet Damien didn't flinch. He turned back to his guests, raising his glass as if nothing had happened. "Let's not ruin the evening," he said coolly, pretending his pregnant wife wasn't lying in agony at his feet. People whispered, some horrified, some pretending not to notice. But one man at the far corner of the hall did notice. His eyes followed Ava as she struggled to breathe, his jaw tight with something more than pity. His name was Liam Cross. No one in the room knew yet, but this night would change everything. And in that single moment, Ava's silent tears became the spark of a revenge that would shake the entire city. Before that terrible night at the gala, Ava Mitchell's life had been a delicate illusion. On the surface, she seemed like the picture of a lucky woman, married to one of the city's richest men, carrying his child, living in a mansion overlooking Central Park. To outsiders, she was blessed. But behind the glass walls of that luxurious home was a woman slowly being erased. Ava had not come from wealth. She grew up in a quiet neighborhood in Chicago, the daughter of a schoolteacher and a mechanic. Her childhood was filled with second-hand clothes, scraped knees, and the smell of her father's old garage. But what she lacked in luxury, she gained in resilience. She excelled in art, painting late into the night with brushes that cost more than her weekly allowance. College was her dream, and she earned a scholarship with sheer determination. That was where she first believed she was building her own destiny. Then came Damien Mitchell. He was dazzling, magnetic, the kind of man who could silence a room with his presence. Ava met him at a charity auction while she was working part-time as an art curator. He had been one of the wealthiest donors, and he noticed her immediately. Within weeks, their whirlwind romance began. Lavish dinners, weekend getaways, promises whispered under moonlight. Ava, inexperienced in the ways of the wealthy, fell headfirst into what she thought was love. When Damien proposed, she believed her fairy tale had come true. She traded her small apartment for a penthouse, her modest dreams for his grand empire. For a time, she thought she had found safety, but the cracks showed quickly. Damien's affection turned to criticism. His sweet promises twisted into biting remarks. He complained that she didn't fit into his world, that she lacked the polish and pedigree his friends expected. Ava tried to adapt, changing her clothes, her speech, even her mannerisms, until she barely recognized herself in the mirror. Then came the pregnancy. At first, Ava believed it would be their salvation. Damien seemed thrilled, telling her he wanted a son to carry his legacy. For a few brief weeks, she saw glimpses of the man she had fallen in love with. But soon the reality set in. Damien did not want a partner. He wanted a trophy. Her pregnancy became another inconvenience, another reason to mock her swollen ankles, her tired eyes, her slower steps. Ava endured in silence. She told herself it was temporary, that once the baby arrived, things would change. She poured all her love into the life growing inside her, shielding her unborn child from the cruelty outside. But deep inside, fear gnawed at her. She was isolated, no close family nearby, no real friends left. Damien controlled her accounts, her schedule, even her access to doctors. The mansion was not a home. It was a gilded cage. And yet, Ava still clung to hope. That was why she walked into the gala, stomach heavy with new life, believing that if she faced Damien in public, maybe, just maybe, he would remember his humanity. She thought she could remind him of the vows they once shared. Instead, she was humiliated in front of the entire city. Now, lying in a hospital bed after the brutal kick, Ava faced a truth she could no longer ignore. The man she had sacrificed everything for wanted her gone. She was broke, powerless, and pregnant, with no one to turn to, or so she thought. Because in the shadows of her downfall, a man named Liam Cross was about to step forward, and his entrance would change Ava's fate forever. New York City had always been a place of contradictions. Beneath the towering glass skyscrapers and glittering penthouses lay stories of heartbreak and betrayal. For the elite, the city was a playground, a stage for power, wealth, and spectacle. And no event embodied this stage better than the Metropolitan Museum Charity Gala. It was not just a fundraiser, it was a declaration of status, a chance for the richest families to remind the world that they ruled it. The ballroom shimmered that night, drenched in golden light from chandeliers imported from Vienna. Waiters in crisp white jackets glided across the marble floor with silver trays of champagne and oysters. The orchestra played Mozart softly in the background, but the real music of the evening was the hum of money. Investors whispering about their next billion-dollar deals, women comparing the sparkle of their diamonds, and men boasting about political favors owed to them. Damien Mitchell thrived in this world. He had clawed his way to the top, not by kindness but by ruthless ambition. His empire stretched across skyscrapers, luxury hotels, and private islands. He wasn't just a man of wealth, he was a man who demanded to be feared. To the business community, Damien was untouchable. To the social elite, he was the king they bowed to. Yet behind his polished tuxedo and charming smile, Damien's arrogance was like poison. He paraded Roxanne Croft on his arm that evening, as if she were the crown jewel he had earned. Roxanne, young and ambitious, knew how to play the part. She wore a crimson gown cut daringly low, her hand clinging to Damien's arm as she laughed too loudly at his jokes. For the cameras, they were perfect. A glamorous couple who belonged on the front page of every magazine. The irony was sharp. While Damien basked in the glow of chandeliers, Ava lay in a hospital room, fighting to keep her unborn child safe. The same city that celebrated Damien's empire had no idea of the monster he truly was. Or perhaps they did, but they preferred to look away. In this glittering world, appearances were everything, and sympathy was in short supply. Every corner of the gala was a reminder of how far Ava had been erased. The women she once dined with whispered cruelly about her absence. The men who used to greet her with respect now pretended she didn't exist. To them, she was a disposable chapter in Damien's story, a fragile woman who couldn't keep up with the pace of his empire. And still, Damien smiled. He shook hands with senators, toasted with Wall Street giants, and whispered promises of future deals. He was untouchable. Or so he thought. Because somewhere among the glitter and the laughter stood Liam Cross. Unlike the others, he wasn't dazzled by Damien's empire. Liam had known Damien once, back when ambition hadn't yet turned him into a monster. Tonight, as he watched Damien bask in his false glory, Liam's eyes carried something rare in that ballroom. Disgust. The gala raged on, louder and more dazzling, as though nothing had happened. But beneath the glitter lay a fracture, invisible yet growing. For Damien, the night was a victory lap. For Ava, it was the darkest moment of her life. And for Liam, it was the beginning of something neither Damien nor Roxanne could have predicted. Because when power builds its castle too high, all it takes is one spark to burn it down. And that spark was already waiting. Damien Mitchell was not always a billionaire. He had started out as a man with nothing but ambition and charm. In his early days, he knew how to play humble, how to wear the mask of a hard-working dreamer. But money had changed him, or maybe it had revealed the darkness that was always there. By the time his empire stretched across half of Manhattan, Damien no longer needed to pretend. He believed himself invincible. Cruelty became his favorite weapon. With Ava, he used it like a scalpel, slicing away at her self-worth piece by piece. He called her weak when she cried. He mocked her background, saying she should be grateful he had lifted her out of poverty. Even her pregnancy was not spared. He sneered that she looked like a burden with swollen feet. Each word was designed to keep her small, silent, dependent. And yet, Damien could charm the world outside. At business meetings, he was polished and persuasive. At the gala, he was magnetic, commanding every gaze in the room. This duality, devoted husband in public, tyrant in private, was his greatest manipulation. He knew people only believed what glittered. Beside him stood Roxanne Croft, the mistress who had become his shadow. Unlike Ava, Roxanne didn't want love. She wanted power. Ambition burned in her eyes, and she saw Damien not as a man, but as a ladder. She was 26, clever enough to hide her hunger behind a smile, bold enough to take risks others wouldn't dare. When Damien flaunted her in front of the elite, she felt untouchable. But their relationship was built not on trust, but on poison. Damien liked Roxanne because she fed his ego. She laughed at his cruel jokes, clung to his arm like a trophy, and whispered flattery that kept his arrogance alive. In return, he gave her diamonds, designer gowns, and a spotlight. To him, she was disposable. To her, he was a means to rewrite her destiny. The night Damien kicked Ava was the night their alliance became dangerous. Roxanne's smirk as Ava fell to the floor said it all. She had won, or so she thought. In her mind, Ava was finished, erased, forgotten. She didn't realize that cruelty always plants seeds of destruction. Behind closed doors, Damien and Roxanne were even more ruthless. He promised her that Ava would be taken care of, legally. He boasted that Ava had no money, no family, and no power to fight back. Roxanne giggled, sipping her champagne, dreaming of the day she would replace Ava as Mrs. Mitchell. She imagined herself in Ava's place, draped in wealth, mother to Damien's heir, her name etched into the city's social circles. But ambition has a cost. Roxanne underestimated two things: Ava's hidden strength and Damien's loyalty, because Damien had none. The same cruelty he inflicted on Ava was waiting for her too. She just hadn't tasted it yet. As the gala carried on, Damien whispered into Roxanne's ear, "This is our world now. Nothing and no one can touch us." His words were smug, dripping with the pride of a man who thought himself untouchable. Yet in a quiet corner of the ballroom, Liam Cross listened, his expression unreadable. He had seen men like Damien rise, and he had seen them fall. And as he watched Roxanne bask in borrowed glory, Liam knew her hunger would one day consume her. What Damien and Roxanne didn't know was that Ava's silence wasn't surrender. It was the calm before a storm that would destroy them both. The morning after the gala, New York awoke buzzing with whispers. By sunrise, the story had already slipped through the velvet curtains of the elite and spilled into the streets. The tabloids feasted on it, spinning headlines with ruthless precision. Mitchell gala drama, pregnant wife causes scene. Damien Mitchell humiliated by emotional spouse. Socialite Ava Mitchell spirals at charity event. The truth, the brutal kick, the tears, the gasps of the horrified crowd, was nowhere to be found. Money had done its job. Damien's public relations team moved faster than lightning, silencing witnesses, buying off photographers, and planting new narratives. Instead of being a victim, Ava was painted as a hysterical woman desperate for attention. Inside her hospital room, Ava scrolled through the news on her phone, her hands trembling. Each headline cut deeper than the bruise blooming on her ribs. She wanted to scream that it was all lies. She wanted to beg the world to see what really happened. But she couldn't. Damien controlled the media, and his reach was limitless. Her phone buzzed with messages, not of comfort, but of betrayal. Old friends she once dined with sent polite but cold texts. "I hope you're okay. Maybe it's best to keep a low profile." Others didn't bother hiding their disdain. "Ava, why would you cause such a scene while pregnant?" Even her distant relatives, who had once been proud of her marriage, now whispered that maybe she wasn't stable enough to be Damien's wife. Damien, meanwhile, played his role perfectly. Photographs of him leaving the gala hand in hand with Roxanne flooded the internet. He looked calm, even protective, as though shielding her from the chaos his wife had allegedly caused. The contrast was devastating. To the public eye, Damien was the graceful billionaire, and Ava was the unstable woman falling apart. It was betrayal layered upon betrayal. The city she once thought admired her now mocked her. The man who vowed to protect her turned her into a punchline, and the child she carried was now bound to a scandal that smeared their very existence. Still, Ava refused to break. She placed her hand on her swollen stomach, whispering softly to the life inside her, "I'll protect you. I don't know how yet, but I will." Her voice cracked, but her resolve hardened. She realized that the world might never hand her justice freely. She would have to take it, yet taking it seemed impossible. Damien had silenced witnesses, paid off newspapers, and crushed her image in less than 24 hours. And now she had nothing. No money, no home, no allies. Or so she believed. Because as Ava stared out the hospital window at the city skyline, a knock came at the door. When she turned, she didn't see a nurse or a doctor. She saw a tall figure, sharp-eyed, carrying a quiet intensity. It was Liam Cross. And the words he was about to speak would offer Ava a glimmer of hope in a world that had turned its back on her. The hospital room was silent except for the faint beeping of the monitor. Ava sat propped against the pillows, her hands wrapped protectively around her belly. The physical pain from Damien's kick had dulled to a constant ache, but the emotional wound was far sharper. Shame, betrayal, fear. They pressed down on her chest until she could barely breathe. When Liam Cross entered, she barely looked up. She had no energy left for polite greetings or curious questions. Her world had already crumbled. He stood by the doorway for a moment, studying her quietly, before pulling a chair to her bedside. "You don't know me well," Liam began, his voice calm but steady. "But I know what happened last night. And I know it wasn't you who caused the scene." Ava's lips trembled. For hours, she had been drowning in lies spun by the media. Hearing someone state the truth felt like oxygen. Yet suspicion lingered. "Why should I trust you?" she whispered. "Everyone else has already taken his side." Liam leaned forward, his eyes sharp. "Because I've seen men like Damien before. They rise fast, they shine bright, but they always fall. And when they do, it's never gentle." His words carried a weight that made Ava's chest tighten. But the comfort was fleeting. Hours later, when Liam left to make some calls, Ava found herself spiraling again. The nurse brought her discharge papers. She realized with a jolt that she had nowhere to go. Damien had frozen her accounts, stripped her of credit cards, and thrown her out of the mansion. She was, for the first time since meeting him, truly alone. She wandered out of the hospital with a small plastic bag of belongings, her hand clutching her swollen belly. The autumn wind bit at her face, cruel and indifferent. She hailed a cab, but when the driver asked for a destination, her mind went blank. There was no home to return to, no family to run toward. For the first time in her life, Ava Mitchell had no place in the world. The cab dropped her off at a shabby motel. The neon sign buzzed, half of the letters flickering out. She paid with the last crumpled bills she had hidden in her purse. Inside the room, the wallpaper peeled, and the sheets smelled faintly of mildew. It was a far cry from the marble floors and silk curtains of Damien's mansion. But as she lay on the thin mattress, she realized something terrifying. She might not survive this. Her body shook as she sobbed into the pillow. She thought of her unborn child, fragile and innocent, caught in a war it never asked for. For a fleeting moment, Ava wondered if it would be easier to give up, to surrender completely, to stop fighting a battle she could never win against a man like Damien. But then her phone buzzed. A message appeared on the cracked screen. "I know where you are. Don't worry, you're not alone." It was Liam. Somehow he had found her. Somehow he wasn't letting her disappear into the shadows. And the next move he made would drag Ava back into a fight she thought she had already lost. The motel room was dim, the buzzing neon light from outside leaking through the cracked blinds. Ava sat on the bed, her hands clutching her stomach as though holding herself together. She hadn't slept in 2 days. Fear had become her shadow, and despair her only companion. But then came the knock at the door. Firm, steady, relentless. Ava froze. For a second, she thought it might be Damien's men, come to drag her back, silence her, or worse. With trembling fingers, she opened the door a crack. It was Liam Cross. He stood tall, wearing the same calm expression as at the hospital, though his eyes carried something heavier tonight, determination. Without asking permission, he stepped inside, shutting the door firmly behind him. In his hand was a leather briefcase, worn at the edges but locked tight. "You shouldn't be here," Ava whispered, panic rising in her chest. "If Damien finds out—" "He already thinks you're finished," Liam interrupted. His voice was low, steady. "That's what makes this the perfect moment." From the briefcase, he pulled out a stack of documents, thick enough to change everything. He spread them across the flimsy motel table, his fingers tapping the pages. "These," he said, "are proof that your husband isn't just cruel, he's corrupt." Ava blinked, too stunned to move. She picked up one sheet, her eyes scanning the numbers and signatures. Offshore accounts, shell companies, bribes disguised as consulting fees. It was a spiderweb of deception, so intricate it made her stomach turn. Liam leaned closer. "Damien's empire isn't as solid as he wants the world to believe. Half of his fortune is tied to fraud. If these documents reach the right people, his empire collapses." Ava's heart raced. She had lived for years under the shadow of Damien's wealth, believing he was untouchable. To see evidence that he wasn't just powerful, but criminal, was like seeing cracks in a prison wall. For the first time she felt a spark, small, fragile, but real. Hope. "But why are you showing me this?" she asked quietly. Suspicion crept in again. "You worked with him once. You were his friend." Liam's jaw tightened. "I was his lawyer. I saw things I shouldn't have. I stayed silent for too long. But then I saw what he did to you. That was the last straw." He paused, his gaze steady. "I can't erase the past, Ava, but I can help you now. The question is, are you ready to fight?" Her hand trembled as she set the paper down. The image of Damien kicking her at the gala flashed in her mind, the laughter of his friends ringing in her ears. She thought of the lies printed in the newspapers, of Roxanne's smirk, of her child growing inside her, unwanted by its own father. Ava lifted her chin. Her voice was quiet but firm. "Yes, I'll fight." Liam nodded once, as if he had been waiting for that answer. He began to outline the first steps, discreetly leaking small pieces of information to trusted journalists, planting doubt in the boardroom, forcing Damien's allies to question their loyalty. "It won't happen overnight," he warned. "But the moment he realizes you're not broken, he'll come after you harder than ever. You need to be ready." Ava looked at the papers again, her heart pounding. For years, Damien held all the power. Now, for the first time, she held a weapon. And when she finally decided how to use it, the city would no longer whisper about her humiliation. They would roar about her revenge. For the first time in weeks, Ava felt a sliver of strength. Liam's documents had given her something Damien could never take back: power. But power in the wrong hands could also be a curse, and Ava was about to learn just how dangerous it could be. She needed someone to talk to, someone familiar, someone who knew her, before Damien turned her life into a cage. That's when she thought of Claire. Claire Evans had been Ava's closest friend since college. They had shared dorm rooms, late-night pizza, and secrets only best friends knew. When Ava married Damien, Claire had been her maid of honor, smiling through tears as she gave a speech about true love. Over the years, their friendship had thinned under the weight of Damien's controlling schedule, but Ava never doubted Claire's loyalty. If anyone could understand her pain, it would be Claire. So, Ava dialed her number. To her surprise, Claire answered quickly, her voice soft and worried. "Ava? Oh my God, I saw the headlines. Are you okay?" The sound of concern made Ava's chest ache. She poured out everything: her humiliation at the gala, Damien's cruelty, the lies in the press. Claire listened without interruption, her tone gentle, her words soothing. "You don't deserve this," Claire whispered. "Damien has always been too much. Tell me what you need, I'll help." Relief washed over Ava. For the first time since her world shattered, she felt less alone. She agreed to meet Claire at a quiet cafe downtown. The meeting felt like stepping back in time. Claire hugged her tightly, her perfume familiar, her smile unchanged. Ava's guard dropped. Over coffee she confided in Claire about Liam, about the documents, about her plan to fight back. She spoke in hushed tones, terrified of being overheard, but desperate to share her burden with someone she trusted. Claire nodded sympathetically, her hand covering Ava's. "You're stronger than you think," she said warmly. "But Damien won't let this go. Be careful, Ava. What Ava didn't see was the flicker in Claire's eyes, the hesitation of someone weighing loyalty against temptation. Because 2 days later, Damien received an envelope. Inside were copies of the very documents Liam had given Ava, along with a handwritten note. She's planning to use this against you. Thought you should know. See. Damien smirked as he read the files. His rage at Ava's defiance turned into amusement. So she thinks she can fight me, he muttered. To Roxanne, who lounged nearby, he chuckled. I always told you, everyone has a price, even her friends. When Ava called Claire again, her friend's tone had shifted. She was distant, distracted, full of excuses. I'm just busy with work, Claire said quickly before hanging up. Ava's stomach tightened with unease. Something was wrong. That night, Liam stormed into the motel room, his face grim. He dropped the newspaper on the table. The headline screamed, Damien Mitchell faces false allegations, leaked documents debunked as fake. Ava's heart stopped. Her secret weapon, the one thing giving her hope, was now in Damien's hands. He had twisted it, used it to make her look desperate and dishonest. And worst of all, someone she trusted had betrayed her. She sank into the chair, tears burning her eyes. It was Claire, she whispered. She was the only one I told. Liam's jaw clenched. Then Claire just handed Damien the first battle. He leaned closer, his eyes sharp. But the war isn't over, because Damien's empire wasn't as bulletproof as he believed, and Ava was about to discover a truth even more dangerous than betrayal. The betrayal from Claire had left Ava shaken to her core. She had always believed that Damien's cruelty was the sharpest knife in her life. But now she realized betrayal could also come with a smile, a hug, and the voice of a friend. If Claire could turn against her, who else could? That question became terrifying when Ava stumbled upon something about Liam. It began innocently enough. She was rummaging through the briefcase Liam had left behind in the motel while he stepped out to take a call. She wasn't snooping, not exactly, just searching for reassurance, for something solid she could hold on to. But as her hands brushed through folders and papers, she found a set of old legal documents. Contracts, memorandums, all neatly signed at the bottom. Her blood ran cold. The name on the signature line was unmistakable. Damien Mitchell. Ava froze, her mind spinning. Liam hadn't just known Damien. He had represented him. He had been Damien's lawyer. When Liam returned, he immediately noticed the paper in her hand. His expression hardened, and for the first time, Ava saw something in his eyes she hadn't before. Guilt. You worked for him, Ava whispered, her voice breaking. You were his lawyer. You protected him. You built his empire. Liam shut the door quietly, his jaw tight. Yes, years ago, before I knew what kind of man he really was. But Ava's chest tightened with panic. How can I trust you? For all I know, you're still working for him. Maybe this is all a setup. Maybe you're just another one of his traps. The words sliced through the air. Liam didn't flinch, but his silence was worse than anger. Finally, he spoke, his tone low and steady. You're right. I did protect him once. I signed deals that I regret. I turned a blind eye when I shouldn't have. But I walked away the day I realized he wasn't just ruthless. He was dangerous. And I've been waiting for the right chance to undo the damage ever since. Ava shook her head, tears filling her eyes. Do you expect me to believe that? After Claire? After everything? For a moment, the motel room felt smaller, the walls pressing in on her. Doubt clawed at her chest. Had she placed her survival, her child's future, in the hands of another man who could betray her? Liam stepped closer, his voice firmer now. If I wanted to betray you, I already could have. Damien trusts no one, but he still underestimates me. That's his mistake. I know his secrets better than anyone, and that makes me more dangerous to him than you can imagine. Still, Ava's doubts lingered. She thought of the kick at the gala, the humiliation, the betrayal by Claire. Everyone around her seemed to have a price. How could she be sure Liam wasn't just waiting for his? The room was silent except for the hum of the neon light outside. Ava's heartbeat thundered in her ears. She wanted to believe him, but belief had burned her too many times before. Liam placed his hand on the table, palm open, steady. You don't have to trust me right now. Just trust that Damien is afraid of me. And if you stay by my side, that fear will become his downfall. Ava stared at him, torn between suspicion and hope. She thought of her unborn child, of the life she wanted to protect, of the empire she wanted to see crumble. Slowly, she set the document back on the table. But deep inside, a chilling question haunted her. Was Liam truly her savior, or the deadliest betrayal yet to come? For weeks, Ava had been silent. The media had painted her as unstable, Damien had paraded Roxanne as his new queen, and even her closest friend had betrayed her. But silence was no longer an option. If Damien's world was built on image, then she would strike at the one place he never expected: public perception. It began with a phone call. Liam handed her a list of journalists who had once admired Damien but had since been cut out of his favor. Men and women who had sniffed out his corruption but were silenced with money or threats. "They're hungry for the truth," Liam told her. "If you speak, they'll listen. And once your voice is out there, Damien won't be able to erase it." The thought terrified her. Ava had never been one for public speaking. She was an art curator once, happiest in quiet galleries, her voice hushed in reverence for paintings centuries old. But this wasn't about comfort anymore. This was survival. This was justice. She agreed. 2 days later, Ava walked into a small studio tucked away in the heart of the city. Cameras, lights, microphones. It was overwhelming. She wore no diamonds, no designer gowns, just a simple navy dress and the quiet dignity of a woman who had been broken but refused to stay that way. The reporter, a sharp-eyed woman named Naomi Price, leaned forward and asked softly, "Ava, why are you here today?" For a moment, Ava's throat closed. Her palms dampened. She could almost hear Damien's mocking voice in her head. "You're nothing without me. No one cares what you have to say." But then she thought of her unborn child. She thought of the night at the gala, of the kick, of the laughter that still echoed in her nightmares. And she spoke. Her voice trembled at first, but as she continued, it grew stronger. She told the world about the humiliation, the lies, the control. She spoke of the accounts Damien had frozen, the isolation, the fear. She didn't frame herself as a victim, but as a woman determined to protect her child and reclaim her dignity. By the end of the interview, tears shimmered in her eyes. "I don't want pity," she said firmly. "I want truth. And I want people to see Damien Mitchell for what he really is." When the segment aired, it exploded. The internet was divided. Some still mocked her, clinging to the lies Damien had fed them. But others, many others, believed her. Hashtags trended overnight: "Stand with Ava," "Justice for her." For the first time, the narrative wasn't controlled by Damien's PR machine. It was hers. Damien's reaction was swift and furious. Within hours, his lawyers issued statements calling her delusional and vindictive. Roxanne, ever eager to play the supportive partner, posted glamorous photos of herself with Damien, captioned with lines like, "Love wins over lies." But beneath the glossy smiles, cracks were beginning to show. Investors called for explanations. Board members whispered about instability. Ava sat in the motel room, scrolling through comments online. For every cruel word, there were 10 that lifted her up. For the first time in months, she felt seen. Not as Damien's wife, not as a scandal, but as Ava, a woman with a voice. Liam watched her quietly, a faint smile tugging at his lips. "You just lit the first fire," he said, "and Damien is about to learn what it feels like to burn." But Ava didn't yet know. Damien's next move would not just target her reputation. It would strike at the very core of her identity. The interview had been a turning point. For the first time, Ava's voice had cut through Damien's carefully curated image. The world had seen her pain, her resilience, her humanity. But for Damien Mitchell, it wasn't just an embarrassment. It was war. And Damien never played fair. 2 days after the interview aired, headlines flooded the internet again. Only this time, the story wasn't about Ava's courage. It was about her supposed instability. Exclusive, leaked records show Ava Mitchell's history of mental health struggles. Damien Mitchell's estranged wife, unfit to be a mother. Ava's heart dropped as she read the articles. Screenshots of what looked like official hospital documents filled her phone screen. Medical notes suggesting she had once been treated for episodes of paranoia and emotional instability. It was a lie. She had never stepped foot in a psychiatric clinic. But the documents were convincing, stamped, signed, and leaked with surgical precision. She slammed her phone down, her hands shaking. "He forged them," she whispered, her voice cracking. "He actually forged them." Liam sat across the room, his expression grim but unsurprised. This is Damien's playbook. When he can't silence someone, he destroys their credibility. The impact was immediate. Talk shows debated her fitness as a mother. Comment sections overflowed with venom. She's crazy. Poor Damien, stuck with a hysterical wife. She should never raise that baby. It wasn't just words. The hospital where Ava had been receiving prenatal care called, informing her that due to concerns, her appointments would be reassessed. Even her landlord at the dingy motel hinted she might not be welcome if the press continued swarming outside. Everywhere she turned, the walls closed in. Damien's power was suffocating. Late that night, Ava curled up on the thin motel bed, tears streaking her face. "I can't do this," she whispered. "He's going to take everything, even my baby." Liam knelt beside her, his voice firm but gentle. "Listen to me. Those records are fake. I know because I've seen how Damien operates. He creates lies so believable that the truth gets buried. But that's also his weakness. If we expose even one forgery, his whole empire of lies collapses." Ava looked up at him, her eyes swollen but fierce. "How?" Liam opened his briefcase and pulled out a folder. "Because the doctor whose name is on these records? He's been dead for 5 years. Damien didn't even bother to check. And once we prove that, the world will start questioning everything else he's done." Hope flickered, fragile but real. Ava wiped her tears, determination building again. For every trap Damien laid, she would find a way to claw herself free. She wasn't just fighting for herself anymore. She was fighting for the child growing inside her. But Damien wasn't finished. That very night, his team released another bombshell, a video of Ava, secretly recorded months earlier during a private argument, where she cried hysterically as Damien coldly walked away. The clip was edited to make her look unstable, her sobs amplified, her words twisted. The internet erupted again. Ava's pain had been turned into a weapon against her. She stared at the screen, her fists clenched, her whole body trembling. She had thought the interview was her breakthrough. Instead, Damien had turned it into her downfall. And as she sat in the darkness, Ava realized, if Damien could twist her tears into madness, he might be capable of something even darker. The storm outside pounded against the motel's thin windows, rain hammering like a relentless drum. Ava sat on the edge of the bed, her body exhausted but her mind restless. Ever since Damien's forged medical records had nearly destroyed her, she lived in constant fear of his next move. But fear had also sharpened her. She no longer thought of herself as powerless. She was searching, observing, waiting. That night, Liam returned with another file. He tossed it on the table, his expression unreadable. "I pulled this from an old storage unit tied to one of Damien's shell companies. It might be nothing, but it could be everything." Ava's pulse quickened as she opened the folder. Inside was a thick document, stamped and notarized. The words at the top made her heart stop. "Last Will and Testament of Damien Mitchell." Her hands trembled as she flipped through the pages. The will was dated 3 years ago, long before Roxanne. Damien had carefully outlined the distribution of his empire. What startled Ava most was a single clause written in bold legal language. "In the event of my death, the majority of my estate and controlling shares of my corporations are to be transferred to my legal spouse and the firstborn child of said marriage." Ava stared at the words, unable to breathe. It wasn't Roxanne. It wasn't anyone else. It was her. Her and the baby she carried. She looked up at Liam, her voice shaking. "Do you understand what this means?" Liam nodded slowly. "It means Damien's entire empire, everything he's built, doesn't belong to him alone. The moment your child is born, you and that child become the legal heirs to everything he's tried to steal from you." 1,000 emotions crashed into Ava at once. Rage, hope, fear. Damien had spent years belittling her, humiliating her, trying to erase her from existence. Yet in black and white, the law bound his empire to her unborn child. No matter how much he flaunted Roxanne, no matter how many lies he told, the truth was clear. His legacy depended on the woman he tried to destroy. For the first time, Ava laughed. It was bitter, broken, but real. "He thought he could throw me away like trash, but all along his empire was tied to me." Liam leaned closer, his eyes sharp. "That's why he's so desperate. That's why he's trying to break you before the baby comes. If you're gone, or if the world believes you're unfit, the board could move to strip your rights. He knows the clock is ticking." The realization hit Ava like a blow. Damien wasn't just cruel. He was calculating. Every smear campaign, every forged record, every humiliation, It wasn't just about pride. It was about control. He was preparing the world to reject her claim when the time came. Her laughter died, replaced with cold resolve. She traced the bold words of the will with her finger. Then I'll fight, not just for me, not just for my child, but for everything he tried to steal. This time, Damien won't win. Outside, thunder shook the motel walls. Ava closed the folder, her decision made. But as Liam locked the documents back in his briefcase, his phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, and for the first time, Ava saw fear flicker across his face. "What is it?" she demanded. Liam's voice was tight, urgent. "Damien knows we found the will, and he's already moving to destroy it." And in that instant, Ava realized her child's future, and the empire Damien tried to erase her from, was in greater danger than ever. The rain had cleared by morning, but Ava's storm was only beginning. The will had changed everything. For weeks, she had been on the defensive, a woman cornered, painted as unstable and powerless. But now she had something Damien couldn't bury, a legal document that tied his entire empire to her and the child she carried. "Use it," Liam said as they sat in the motel room, sunlight slicing through the blinds. "Don't hide this. Don't wait for him to destroy it. Make the world see that no matter what he does, you and your child are the future of his empire." Ava hesitated. The thought of going public again terrified her. The last time she'd spoken out, Damien had smeared her with forged records and edited videos. But this time, she wasn't speaking from pain. This time, she was armed with proof. She nodded slowly. "No more whispers, no more hiding. If Damien built his power on lies, then I'll burn it down with the truth." Within days, Ava reappeared in public, not in the shadows of a motel, not as a broken woman, but as someone transformed. She arrived at a financial summit, one of the city's most prestigious events, her figure poised in a sleek black dress that commanded respect rather than pity. Liam walked at her side, not as her savior, but as her ally, carrying the briefcase that held Damien's secret. The room fell silent when she entered. Bankers, investors, socialites, people who had once turned away from her, now whispered in awe. She stood at the podium, her voice steady, her gaze unflinching. "For months I've been silenced," Ava began. "Lies were told about me. Records were forged. My dignity was stripped away. But today, I bring the truth. Not just about me, but about Damien Mitchell." Gasps echoed as she revealed the will, holding it up for the cameras. Flashbulbs exploded, capturing every detail. She read aloud the clause that secured her and her child as the heirs to Damien's empire. "This is not my opinion. This is his own signature, his own words." The audience buzzed with disbelief. Investors shifted uncomfortably. Journalists scribbled furiously. The narrative was no longer Ava the hysterical wife, it was Ava the rightful heir. Back in his penthouse, Damien watched the broadcast, his face pale with rage. Roxanne stood behind him, clutching her phone, her smile frozen. "She's ruining everything," Damien growled. He slammed his glass against the table, shards scattering across the floor. "I won't let her take what's mine." For Ava, the moment was both terrifying and liberating. The world was finally listening, not to Damien's lies, but to her truth. Yet even as the applause rose in the summit hall, she felt the weight of what was coming. Damien wouldn't retreat. He wouldn't surrender. He would strike harder, faster, more ruthlessly than ever. Later that night, as she returned to the motel, Ava found herself standing in front of the mirror. She no longer saw the broken woman who had been kicked to the ground at the gala. She saw a mother, a fighter, a woman who had been underestimated for too long. But just as resolve steadied her, Liam entered the room, his phone still in his hand, his face grave. "We may have moved too fast," he said. Ava's chest tightened. "What do you mean?" Liam locked eyes with her, his voice sharp. "Damien isn't just fighting back in the media anymore. He's petitioning the court to declare you unfit to raise your child, and he's bribed people in high places to make it happen." In that moment, Ava realized the battle was no longer just about reputation. It was about the very right to keep her baby. The morning after Ava's triumphant reveal of Damien's will, the city buzzed with speculation. News anchors debated legal clauses, investors whispered in hushed tones, and for the first time, Damien's name was tied to weakness rather than power. But while Ava tasted her first real victory, Damien was already planning his deadliest counterattack. He would take the one thing she loved most, the child growing inside her. By noon, court documents were filed. Damien's legal team petitioned the family court to declare Ava Mitchell mentally unfit to parent her unborn child. The forged medical records, the edited videos of her crying, the endless tabloid headlines, all were compiled into a thick dossier of evidence. The petition claimed Ava posed a danger to the child, that she was unstable, erratic, and incapable of making sound decisions. Damien presented himself as the only suitable guardian, a stable billionaire who could provide safety and opportunity. The irony was sickening. The man who had kicked his pregnant wife in public now positioned himself as the baby's savior. When Liam read the petition aloud in the motel room, Ava nearly collapsed. Her hands clutched her belly, her breaths coming in sharp gasps. "He's trying to steal my baby," she whispered, her voice breaking. "He's going to rip my child away before it's even born." Liam knelt beside her, his tone firm. "Listen to me. This is desperation. Damien knows he's losing control, so he's going after the only thing that still gives you strength. But we can fight this. We will fight this." But Ava's mind spiraled. She imagined her child growing up in Damien's mansion, raised by Roxanne, taught to despise the mother who had carried them. The thought was unbearable. Tears streamed down her face, her sobs echoing off the motel walls. The next morning, Ava was summoned to court. Cameras swarmed the steps, reporters shouting questions as she walked in with Liam at her side. She wore no jewels, no armor, but her dignity. Inside, the courtroom buzzed with tension. Damien sat across the aisle, sharp in a tailored suit, his arm draped casually around Roxanne. He looked calm, collected, the picture of control. Ava's stomach turned at the sight. Damien's lawyers presented their case first. They painted Ava as fragile, hysterical, reckless. They displayed the forged medical records on a giant screen. They played the edited video of her sobbing, each cry amplified for the judge to hear. Every lie twisted the knife deeper. Then it was Ava's turn. She stood, her hands trembling, but when she spoke, her voice was steady. "I am not perfect," she admitted. "I've been broken, humiliated, betrayed. But I am not unstable. I am a mother, and I will fight for my child with every breath I have left." Some in the courtroom shifted, their expressions softening. For the first time, Damien's mask cracked. His jaw tightened, his eyes flickering with frustration. But then his lawyer played their final card, a surprise witness. Ava's stomach dropped as Claire Evans, her former best friend, stepped forward. Claire looked down, avoiding Ava's eyes, before saying the words that shattered the room. "I've known Ava for years, and she's not well. She needs help. I don't think she's ready to raise a child." The courtroom erupted in murmurs. Ava's knees buckled. Liam caught her arm, his grip firm, his whisper urgent. "Don't give up. This isn't over." But as Ava stared at her former friend betraying her on the stand, she realized Damien wasn't just fighting for control of his empire. He was fighting to erase her completely. The courtroom betrayal had nearly crushed Ava. Watching Claire, her closest friend, stand on the witness stand and call her unfit was a wound deeper than any Damien had inflicted with his lies. For a moment, Ava wanted to collapse, to surrender, to let the fight consume her. But as she sat at the defendant's table, Liam leaned close, his voice low and steady. "Look at him. He's desperate. Desperate men make mistakes. And I think I've found his." That night, Liam worked tirelessly. He combed through old files, emails, financial statements. Ava couldn't sleep. She lay awake, her hand over her belly, whispering promises to her unborn child. "I'll keep you safe, no matter what." At dawn, Liam returned, eyes bloodshot but burning with energy. He dropped a thick stack of papers onto the motel's flimsy table. "Here," he said. "This is how we turn the tide." Ava's fingers shook as she opened the folder. Inside were bank records, large transfers to obscure accounts, all tied to government officials and court clerks. Each payment was traced back to Damien's companies. "These aren't donations," Liam explained. "They're bribes. Damien has been buying influence for years. Judges, inspectors, politicians. But this one," he tapped a page, "this one went straight to the clerk overseeing your custody petition. $200,000, 3 days before the petition was filed." Ava's breath caught. "He paid to take my baby from me." Liam nodded grimly. "And if we prove this, not only will the petition collapse, but Damien will face criminal charges. He thinks he's untouchable, but he's sloppy. And sloppiness is how men like him fall." Hope flickered inside Ava. The thought of exposing Damien for what he truly was, a fraud, a manipulator, a criminal, lit a fire in her chest. But fear gnawed at her too. If we use this, he'll come after us harder than ever. Liam's voice softened. He already has, Ava. You're fighting for your child. There's nothing left to lose, only everything to gain. The next hearing was electric. The courtroom buzzed with tension as Damien's lawyers smirked confidently, certain they'd buried Ava with Claire's testimony. But then Liam stood, calm and deliberate, and placed the bank records on the judge's desk. "Your Honor," Liam said, his voice sharp, "before this court decides on the fate of a child, I believe the court should examine the financial ties between the petitioner and certain officials." The judge's brow furrowed. Gasps echoed as Liam revealed the $200,000 transfer. He spoke with precision, each word landing like a blow. "This is not about the child's welfare. This is about money, bribes, corruption. Damien Mitchell is not protecting his child, he is purchasing custody." Damien's face turned red, his composure cracking for the first time. He slammed his fist against the table, barking at his lawyers. Reporters scribbled furiously, cameras flashed, whispers filled the room. Ava sat tall, her heart pounding. For once, Damien was the one on defense. For once, the world was seeing him without the mask. The judge called for a recess, his tone grave. "This evidence will be investigated immediately. Until then, custody matters are suspended." Ava exhaled, tears slipping down her cheeks, not of despair but of relief. For the first time, it felt like justice might be within reach. Liam placed a steady hand on her shoulder, whispering, "This is the beginning of his downfall." But as they stepped out of the courthouse, cameras blinding and microphones shoving in their faces, a black car screeched to a halt across the street. The tinted window rolled down just enough for Ava to see the cold glint of Damien's eyes. And in that chilling stare, Ava realized Damien was not retreating. He was preparing his deadliest strike yet. The city's elite had gathered once again, this time at the Winter Gala, a night of opulence hosted in the glass atrium of the Crown Hotel. It was a fortress of wealth. Crystal chandeliers reflecting over fountains of champagne, strings of violins weaving through the air. For years, Damien Mitchell had owned this room. Tonight, he expected to do the same, brushing aside rumors of bribery and corruption with a smug smile and Roxanne glittering at his side. But Damien hadn't planned on Ava. For weeks, she had been silent since the last court battle. The press speculated she had retreated, broken by the betrayal of friends and the weight of Damien's power. Some whispered she had fled the city. Others said she was too ashamed to ever show her face again. Damien encouraged those rumors, telling his investors Ava was gone for good. Then the doors opened. The room hushed. Heads turned. And there she was, Ava Mitchell. No longer the trembling, humiliated woman from the gala months earlier. Tonight, she stood tall in a fitted midnight blue gown, her baby bump framed with grace, her eyes steady, her posture unshakable. On her arm was Liam Cross, his presence commanding, his gaze locked ahead. Together, they cut through the glittering crowd like a blade. The whispers spread like wildfire. "That's her. She looks different. Stronger." Flashbulbs burst as photographers scrambled to capture the moment. Damien froze mid-laugh, his glass hovering in his hand. Roxanne clutched his arm, her smile faltering. For the first time, the king of the room looked cornered. Ava didn't need a microphone. Her presence was louder than any speech. She greeted guests with calm confidence, her smile subtle but unyielding. Investors who had once turned their backs now leaned in, eager to shake her hand. Board members murmured among themselves, eyes darting between Damien and Ava, weighing the balance of power. And then the moment came. The host of the evening announced a surprise guest speaker, Ava Mitchell. Gasps erupted as she stepped onto the stage, the spotlight bathing her in silver light. Damien's jaw clenched, his knuckles white around his glass. "Good evening," Ava began, her voice clear and steady. "Some of you may know me as Damien Mitchell's wife. Others may know me as the woman you read about in tabloids. Tonight, I want you to know me for who I truly am. A mother, a fighter, and the rightful heir to the empire Damien has tried to erase me from." The room erupted in murmurs, cameras clicking furiously. Ava held up a document, the will. Its bold clauses, signed by Damien himself, lit up the projector behind her. "This is not gossip. This is law. My child and I are the future of this empire, whether Damien Mitchell accepts it or not." Damien surged to his feet, shouting, "This is a lie. She forged it." But the cracks in his mask were visible. His rage only fed the whispers around the room. Ava didn't flinch. She looked straight at him, her eyes cold. "You can forge medical records, you can edit videos, but you cannot erase your own signature." The crowd gasped, some applauding, others exchanging stunned glances. Investors pulled out their phones, already texting. Board members avoided Damien's glare. In that moment, Ava had stolen the room. Roxanne's grip on Damien's arm tightened, her smile brittle. For the first time, she realized Ava wasn't just surviving, she was winning. And as Ava stepped off the stage, her chin high, Damien's glass shattered against the floor. Because Ava hadn't just reclaimed her dignity, she had declared war, and Damien's empire was beginning to crumble in front of his own eyes. The Winter Gala had been a disaster for Damien Mitchell. Ava's return, her strength, and the revelation of the will had shaken his empire to its foundation. For the first time in years, investors doubted him. Board members questioned him. Whispers of removal circled like vultures, and Roxanne Croft could feel it. She had spent months believing she was untouchable, the queen to Damien's king. But as she stood in the glittering atrium, watching the room shift toward Ava, panic coiled in her chest. Damien was slipping, and if he fell, she would be dragged down with him. That night, back in his penthouse, Damien raged. He smashed glasses, hurled papers, shouted until his voice cracked. "She humiliated me, in front of everyone. I will destroy her." Roxanne tried to soothe him, placing a manicured hand on his shoulder. "Darling, calm down. We'll spin this. We always do." But Damien shoved her hand away. Don't kid yourself. You're nothing without me. Do you think anyone would even know your name if it weren't for me?" The words stung. Roxanne's face flushed, but she forced a brittle smile. "Of course, Damien. I'm just here for you." She retreated to the bedroom, her mind racing. For months, she had played the role of loyal mistress, clinging to Damien's power. But now she saw what Ava had always known. Damien's loyalty was to no one. He would discard Roxanne the second she stopped being useful. And Roxanne had no intention of being discarded. The next morning, as Damien met with his lawyers, Roxanne slipped out, clutching her phone like a weapon. On that phone was a secret she had kept hidden for months. A video she had recorded at the very first gala, when Damien had kicked Ava in front of his friends. She had captured it not out of pity, but as insurance. Insurance she never thought she'd need. Until now. By evening, the video was everywhere. News outlets replayed it on a loop. Damien's polished shoes slamming into Ava's swollen belly, her cry of pain echoing through the ballroom, the horrified gasps of onlookers. The proof was undeniable, the cruelty inescapable. No PR spin, no forged records, no lies could erase what the world now saw with their own eyes. The backlash was immediate. Investors withdrew. Politicians distanced themselves. Protesters gathered outside Damien's skyscrapers, chanting Ava's name. Hashtags exploded online. "Justice for Ava. Damien exposed." Inside his office, Damien watched the footage in stunned silence, his empire collapsing around him. His phone rang endlessly, board members resigning, deals being canceled, allies abandoning him. For the first time in his life, Damien Mitchell looked afraid. And Roxanne? She smiled. When reporters asked her about the video, she tilted her head sweetly, pretending innocence. "I couldn't stay silent anymore," she said. "I had to stand with Ava. Women deserve better." Her performance was flawless, her crocodile tears convincing. Overnight, Roxanne went from villain to supposed whistleblower, basking in the sympathy of a world that had once despised her. But Ava knew the truth. She saw through Roxanne's performance. This wasn't about justice. This was about survival. Still, the damage to Damien was irreversible. His empire teetered, his name disgraced, his allies gone. He was a king with no throne, a man stripped bare for the world to see. But Ava wasn't finished. She hadn't fought this far just to watch Damien crumble quietly. She wanted justice, not just for herself, but for her child. And the final blow she planned would not only end Damien's reign, it would leave him with nothing but ashes. Damien Mitchell had once stood at the top of the world. But now, the world was watching him fall. The video Roxanne released had shattered his empire. Protesters flooded the streets outside his headquarters, chanting Ava's name. Investors fled in droves, board members resigned, and his once loyal friends stopped answering his calls. Damien's face was plastered across every news outlet. no longer as the celebrated billionaire, but as the monster who had brutalized his pregnant wife. Inside his penthouse, the silence was deafening. Bottles littered the floor. His suit jacket lay crumpled on the sofa, and Damien stared out at the city that had once bowed to him. His phone buzzed relentlessly, reporters demanding answers, lawyers begging for meetings, creditors circling like sharks. But Damien ignored them all. For the first time, he was powerless. And then came the final blow. The board of directors called an emergency vote. In a single afternoon, Damien Mitchell was stripped of his position, his shares frozen pending investigation. His empire, built on greed, fear, and corruption, was gone. Roxanne, meanwhile, reveled in the chaos. She strutted in front of cameras, presenting herself as the woman brave enough to stand with Ava. For a moment, she almost convinced the world that she was a hero, not a co-conspirator. But Roxanne had forgotten one thing. Ava now had the power of truth on her side. During a press conference, Ava calmly revealed emails, proof that Roxanne had been complicit all along, working with Damien to smear her and profit from the empire. The same cameras that once celebrated Roxanne now turned against her. Headlines shifted overnight. Roxanne Croft, mistress or manipulator. From sidekick to schemer, her fall from grace. Within days, Roxanne was blacklisted from the very society she had fought so hard to enter. Friends abandoned her, brands canceled endorsements, and doors slammed shut. She became a pariah, a woman no longer admired but pitied, or worse, despised. Damien and Roxanne, once smug and untouchable, were now nothing but cautionary tales. And Ava? She stood taller than ever. The will secured her position as the legal heir. The courts, swayed by Liam's evidence of bribery and corruption, dismissed Damien's custody petition. The baby she carried was safe, protected by law and by the truth that could no longer be buried. But Ava didn't celebrate with cruelty. She didn't mock Damien or gloat in Roxanne's downfall. She stood in front of the cameras, her hand on her belly, her voice steady. "I didn't fight this battle for revenge," she said. "I fought it for justice, for my child, for every woman who has ever been silenced, humiliated, or told she wasn't enough. We are more than what people try to make of us. We are stronger than they can ever imagine." The room erupted in applause. Online, millions of viewers wept, sending messages of solidarity. Ava was no longer just a scandalous headline. She had become a symbol of resilience, of survival, of strength. But behind the applause, behind the flashing cameras, something else was stirring. Because while Damien had lost his company, his wealth, and his reputation, one thing remained: his hatred. And hatred, unchecked, is dangerous. That night, as Ava rested in her motel, exhausted but hopeful, a shadow lingered outside the window. And Ava did not yet know. The most dangerous chapter of her fight was still to come. The shadow outside the motel window vanished before Ava could notice, but Liam did. He had sensed it for days now, that Damien wasn't finished, that his hatred was still brewing even as his empire collapsed. And Liam was right. Damien's final act came one stormy night. Desperate, stripped of power and wealth, he tried to force his way into Ava's motel, determined to reclaim control the only way he knew, through fear. But Liam was there, waiting. The confrontation was brutal. Damien lunged with venom, spitting threats, calling Ava names that once crushed her. But this time, Ava didn't shrink. She stood tall, her voice steady. "You've taken enough from me," she said coldly. "You will take nothing more." The police arrived minutes later, summoned by Liam before Damien even stepped into the building. For once, Damien's wealth couldn't shield him. He was arrested on charges of harassment, fraud, and bribery. As the flashing red and blue lights carried him away, Damien shouted like a madman, but his words no longer had power. The city had already chosen whom to believe. For Ava, it was the end of a nightmare. Weeks later, she gave birth to a healthy baby boy. Tears streamed down her cheeks as she cradled him in her arms, whispering, "You are my miracle. You are why I fought." The hospital room was filled with light, warmth, and a sense of peace she hadn't felt in years. The world celebrated her victory. News outlets hailed her as the woman who brought down a billionaire. Social media called her a symbol of strength, hashtags spreading like wildfire. "Justice for Ava, rise again." She wasn't just Ava Mitchell, the humiliated wife. She was Ava Mitchell, survivor, mother, warrior. But there was one more chapter left to write. One evening, Weeks after the baby's birth, Liam invited Ava to a small rooftop garden overlooking the city skyline. The air was cool, stars scattered across the night sky, the hum of traffic far below. Ava wore a simple dress, her hair loose, her baby asleep in the stroller beside her. She hadn't expected anything more than quiet company. But Liam turned to her, his eyes softer than she had ever seen. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Ava's breath caught as he dropped to one knee. "Ava," he began, his voice steady but thick with emotion. "When I first stepped into that hospital room, I saw a woman the world had tried to break. But what I've seen since then is someone unshakable. You fought for truth, for your child, and for yourself. You don't need saving. You never did. But I would be honored to stand by you, to protect you, to love you for the rest of our lives." He opened the box. Inside was not a massive diamond, but a modest, elegant ring, timeless, understated, like him. Tears blurred Ava's vision. For years, she had lived in the shadow of a man who saw her as less. Now, here was a man who saw her as more than enough. She whispered, her voice breaking, "Yes, 1,000 times yes." Liam slid the ring onto her finger, then pulled her into his arms. For the first time, Ava felt not just safe, but truly cherished. Behind them, the baby stirred softly, the future waiting. Ava looked out at the city skyline, her heart full. Damien had tried to erase her, Roxanne had tried to replace her. But she had risen, stronger than ever. And now, with her child in her arms and a man who truly valued her by her side, she knew one thing for certain. Her story was no longer one of humiliation. It was one of triumph, justice, and love. So, my friends, the story has finally come to an end. You're still here with me, right? If you've stayed until this moment, it means something in Ava's journey touched your heart in a very real way. And maybe, just maybe, it reminded you of your own struggles, your own battles, and the quiet strength you carry inside. Her story wasn't just about betrayal or revenge, it was about resilience, about finding light in the darkest places. The Stoics often said, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. That is exactly what Ava discovered. She couldn't control Damien's cruelty or Roxanne's betrayal, but she chose how to rise, how to fight, and how to protect what mattered most. And isn't that the lesson for all of us? We can't always change what happens, but we can choose how we respond. We can choose dignity, courage, and healing. So if this story moved you, share it with someone who might need a reminder of their own strength. Don't forget to like this video, leave your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe so you never miss another story like this. Together, we heal. Together, we rise.
A single text message can change everything. For Olivia, it was the message she'd been waiting for, the one that confirmed her husband Daniel had finally secured the promotion he'd sacrificed so much for. In her mind, she pictured his face, the triumph in his eyes. She decided in that joyful moment to orchestrate the perfect surprise. A bottle of vintage champagne, his favorite steak dinner, and her waiting in his gleaming new corner office. But the surprise wasn't the one she had planned. Some doors once opened can never be closed again. And what she saw through the crack in his office door that evening didn't just break her heart. It shattered the entire foundation of her world. The late afternoon sun slanted through the bay windows of Olivia and Daniel Peterson's suburban home in Maple Creek, illuminating dust motes dancing in the golden air. It was a beautiful house, the kind featured in magazines, a testament to a decade of ambition, sacrifice, and what Olivia had always believed was unwavering partnership. Every polished hardwood floor, every carefully chosen piece of art, every manicured rosebush in the garden was a brick in the fortress of their shared life. For 10 years they had been a team. Olivia, a talented freelance graphic designer, had tailored her career to be the supportive bedrock, the flexible partner who could handle life's logistics, while Daniel climbed the treacherous ladder at Sterling & Croft, a titan of the financial world. Today was the day, the culmination of a grueling 18-month project that had consumed Daniel, turning him into a ghost in their own home. There were countless late nights, missed dinners, and weekend plans cancelled by a curt text message. Sorry, babe. Swamped. Rain check. Olivia had swallowed her disappointment, each time reminding herself it was for their future. The senior vice president position wasn't just a job, it was the key to the life they had sketched out on cocktail napkins back in their tiny post-college apartment, a life with more time for each other travel, and maybe finally the family they had put on hold. Olivia glanced at the kitchen counter, where 2 champagne flutes stood, waiting, gleaming and expectant. Beside them, a reservation confirmation for their favorite Italian restaurant, Trattoria Valenti, sat tucked under a small weighted box from a luxury watch brand. It was a celebratory gift, a classic timepiece, with the date of his promotion engraved on the back. She had been so sure, so confident. Daniel was brilliant driven and the best at what he did. His boss, Mr. Albright, saw him as a protégé. It was a done deal. Her phone buzzed, startling her from her reverie. Her best friend Sophie was on the line, her voice a bubbly current of energy. Any word from the man of the hour? Sophie asked, the they drawn out for dramatic effect. Not yet. Olivia said, her own voice, tight with a nervous excitement she couldn't quell. I'm a wreck. I've been pacing a trench into the floorboard since noon. Relax, Liv. He's got this in the bag. Albright would be an idiot to give it to Henderson. Henderson still uses a flip phone, for God's sake. Olivia laughed, the sound easing some of the tension in her shoulders. You're right. I know you're right. I want this for him so badly. You have no idea what he's been through these past few months. Oh, I think I do, Sophie said, her tone softening with empathy. And so do you. You've been right there with him, even when he wasn't really there. You deserve this win as much as he does. The words were meant to be a comfort, but they pricked at a tiny buried feeling of loneliness. She had been there, but she'd been alone. She'd eaten countless dinners by herself, attended friends' parties solo, and woken up more times than she could count to the empty space beside her in their king-sized bed. It will all be worth it, she chanted to herself, a mantra that had sustained her for months. They chatted for a few more minutes about Sophie's latest dating disaster before hanging up. As Olivia placed her phone down, it buzzed again, this time with a text. Her heart leapt into her throat. It was from Daniel. Daniel, I got it. Just 3 words in all caps, but they were 3 words that unlocked their future. A wave of pure, unadulterated joy washed over Olivia. Tears welled in her eyes as a breathless laugh escaped her lips. He did it. He had actually done it. She immediately began typing a reply, her fingers flying across the screen. OMG, Daniel. I knew it. I'm so incredibly proud of you. We have to celebrate. His response came back almost instantly. Daniel, I know. Can't wait. But listen, Albright is taking the team out for mandatory drinks. Going to be a late one. Don't wait up. We'll celebrate properly this weekend, I promise. A familiar pang of disappointment pierced through her elation. Mandatory drinks? Of course. Just one more night. One more rain check. But then a new idea began to bloom in her mind, bold and exciting. The weekend felt a lifetime away. He deserved to celebrate now, and she deserved to be the one to celebrate with him. What if she brought the celebration to him? The thought was exhilarating. She could cancel the restaurant reservation. Instead, she'd pack up a surprise. She'd get his favorite takeout, the spicy rigatoni from the very trattoria they were supposed to go to. She'd grab the chilled champagne, and she'd just show up. His new office, the corner one on the 45th floor he'd been coveting for years, the one with the panoramic view of the city. She imagined the look on his face, the surprise, the gratitude, the love. After all the lonely nights and sacrificed moments, this would be their moment. A spontaneous, perfect start to their new life. It would be a story they'd tell for years. The night she surprised him after his big promotion. The plan solidified in her mind, chasing away any lingering disappointment. She moved with purpose, a woman on a mission. She called the restaurant and changed the reservation to a takeout order. She carefully wrapped the chilled champagne bottle in a thermal sleeve and placed it in a chic tote bag along with the crystal flutes, carefully buffered with linen napkins. She touched up her makeup, a smile playing on her lips the entire time. This was so much better than a stuffy dinner. This was real. This was them. As she drove towards the glittering steel and glass skyscraper that housed Sterling and Croft, the city lights blurred into a kaleidoscope of celebratory beacons. The playlist on her car stereo seemed to match her mood, every song an anthem of victory and love. She felt a lightness she hadn't felt in months, the weight of the long wait finally lifted. The fortress of their life had just gained its highest turret. She was on her way to celebrate with the king of her castle, completely unaware that she was about to find a traitor already inside the gates. The lobby of the Sterling and Croft building was an imposing cathedral of marble and chrome, designed to make visitors feel small and insignificant. But tonight, Olivia strode through it with the confidence of a VIP. The evening security guard, a kindly older man named Arthur, whom she'd gotten to know over her few visits, gave her a warm smile. "Evening, Mrs. Peterson. Late night for you," he observed. "Hi, Arthur. I'm here to surprise my husband. He just got a big promotion today," she said, her voice bubbling with excitement. "Ah, Mr. Peterson. I heard the whispers. Senior VP. That's fantastic news. He's a good man. Works harder than anyone I see in this place." Arthur's words were another log on the fire of her pride. They're mostly all cleared out for the night, but he's still up there. Go on up. He's earned a good surprise. The elevator ride to the 45th floor was a silent, swift ascent. Olivia's reflection in the mirrored walls showed a woman glowing with happiness. She smoothed her dress and checked her hair, her heart thrumming a giddy rhythm against her ribs. When the doors opened, the floor was hushed and dimly lit. The bustling daytime energy had been replaced by a deep, reverent silence, broken only by the low hum of electronics. Most of the desks in the vast open-plan area were dark computer screens sleeping. Daniel's new office was at the far end of the floor, a glass-walled corner suite that was a symbol of status and power. As she walked towards it, her heels clicking softly on the polished concrete floor, she could see a light was on inside. Her smile widened. He was there. Probably too wired to leave, just sitting and soaking it all in. She clutched the tote bag, the cool shape of the champagne bottle pressing against her side. She decided to make her entrance as quiet as possible to maximize the surprise. She tiptoed the last few feet, her breath held in anticipation. The door was slightly ajar, a narrow sliver of light cutting across the dark carpet. Perfect. Peeking through the crack, she prepared to swing the door open with a triumphant surprise, but the word died in her throat. The scene inside was not what she had imagined. Daniel was there, yes, but he wasn't alone. He was standing near the massive window, the city's glittering skyline, a backdrop to a drama she couldn't comprehend. His back was mostly to her, but she could see he was holding someone. A woman, a slender woman with sleek dark hair, cut in a sharp, modern bob. Olivia recognized her instantly, Jessica Monroe from Daniel's team. He'd mentioned her a few times, the sharp new analyst, the secret weapon on his project. For a frozen second, Olivia's mind refused to process the image. Maybe he was comforting her. Maybe she was upset about something, and Daniel, as her new boss, was offering a supportive, professional hug. Her brain scrambled for a logical, innocent explanation, a life raft in a suddenly treacherous sea. But then he shifted slightly. His hand, which had been on her back, slid up to cup the back of her head, his fingers tangling in her dark hair. He tilted her chin up, and then slowly, deliberately, he leaned down and kissed her. It wasn't a quick, friendly peck. It was a long, deep and lingering kiss filled with a shocking intimacy. It was the kind of kiss they hadn't shared in months. Olivia watched paralyzed as Jessica's arms snaked around his neck, pulling him closer. The tote bag in Olivia's hand suddenly felt impossibly heavy, as if it were filled with stones instead of a celebration. The champagne bottle, once a symbol of their triumph, now felt like a weapon. Time seemed to warp and distort. Seconds stretched into an eternity. All she could hear was the frantic roaring pulse in her own ears, drowning out the faint hum of the building. Her vision narrowed, until the only thing in the world was that tableau in the office, the two figures silhouetted against the indifferent city lights. The man she had loved since she was 20 years old, the man for whom she had built her entire world, was kissing another woman in his new office on the very night that was supposed to be the culmination of their shared dreams. A strangled sound, a mix between a gasp and a sob, caught in her throat. She slapped a hand over her mouth, terrified of being discovered. The movement broke her paralysis. She needed to get out. Now. Moving with a robotic, jerky motion, she backed away from the door, her steps clumsy and loud in the oppressive silence. She prayed they hadn't heard her. She turned and fled, not walking, but not quite running, a desperate, stumbling retreat down the long corridor. She didn't dare look back. In the elevator, her reflection was a stranger, a pale, wild-eyed woman with a face contorted in a mask of horror and disbelief. Her hand was still clamped over her mouth, and her knuckles were white. The tote bag dropped from her other hand, and the champagne flutes clinked together with a sickeningly cheerful sound. The sound shattered the silence, and it shattered Olivia. A single dry sob escaped her lips. The doors opened to the lobby, and she walked past Arthur's desk without seeing him, her eyes fixed on some distant point of agony. "Everything all right, Mrs. Peterson?" he called out, his voice laced with concern. She couldn't answer. She couldn't form words. She just pushed through the heavy glass doors and out into the cool night air, which felt suffocating. She stumbled towards her car, fumbling for her keys. The city lights that had looked so celebratory on her way here now seemed to mock her. Each twinkling light, a tiny sharp piece of glass aimed directly at her heart. She had gone to his office to surprise him with a celebration of their new beginning, but the only surprise she found was the brutal, undeniable end of everything she had ever known. The drive home was a blur. Olivia operated on pure primal instinct, her hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly her fingers ached, her eyes staring unseeingly at the road ahead. The familiar route felt alien, as if she were a tourist in her own life. Stoplights changed, cars honked. The city moved around her, but she was trapped in the frozen moment of that kiss, replaying it on a torturous loop in her mind, the way his hand tangled in Jessica's hair, the possessive tilt of his head, the utter betrayal etched in that silhouette. When she finally pulled into their driveway, she cut the engine and sat in the suffocating silence of the car. She looked at their beautiful house, the warm lights glowing in the windows, a picture of domestic bliss. It was a lie. The whole thing was a lie. The house wasn't a fortress. It was a stage, a carefully constructed set for a play in which she was the unwitting fool. Leaving the tote bag of shattered dreams on the passenger seat, she stumbled into the house. The scent of lemon polish and fresh flowers, usually a comfort, now smelled cloying and fake. She walked through the rooms, her hand trailing along the walls, touching the framed photos on the mantelpiece. There they were smiling on their wedding day. There they were laughing on a beach in Greece. There they were a year ago, at a Christmas party, his arm wrapped securely around her. Each photograph was a fresh stab of pain, a testament to a history she no longer knew how to read. Was it all a performance? Had he been lying to her then too? Her legs gave out, and she sank onto the plush living room rug, the one they had spent an entire weekend picking out. The carefully contained shock from the drive home finally broke, and a tidal wave of emotion crashed over her. It wasn't just sadness, it was a raw, visceral agony that seemed to tear her apart from the inside. A guttural scream of pain ripped from her throat, a sound she didn't recognize as her own. She pounded her fists against the floor, the physical pain a welcome distraction from the unbearable anguish in her chest. How could he do this to them? To her? On this day of all days. The sheer cruelty of it was breathtaking. He wasn't just cheating, he was desecrating their victory, tarnishing the one thing that had kept her going through all the lonely nights. After the rage subsided, a chilling numbness began to seep in. She felt hollowed out, a fragile shell. Her mind, in a desperate act of self-preservation, began to grasp for details, for clues she must have missed. The late nights weren't just about work. The business dinners weren't just with clients. The newfound distance she had attributed to stress and ambition was something far more sinister. She was a fool. A trusting, supportive, loving fool. Her phone lying on the coffee table buzzed. It was a text from Daniel. Daniel heading home soon. Drinks were a drag. Can't wait to see my beautiful wife. Love you. The casual, familiar words were like poison. Love you. The hypocrisy was so profound, it made her physically sick. She lurched to her feet and ran to the bathroom, retching violently into the toilet. There was nothing in her stomach to come up, just dry, heaving sobs that tore at her throat. When the spasms subsided, she splashed cold water on her face and stared at her reflection in the mirror. The woman looking back was a ghost. Her eyes were red-rimmed and hollow, her face pale and streaked with tears. Who was this person? What was she supposed to do now? She needed Sophie. With trembling fingers, she dialed her best friend's number. Sophie picked up on the second ring. Hey, did he love the watch? Is he home yet? Tell me everything. Sophie's cheerful voice was a stark contrast to the wreckage of Olivia's world. Olivia tried to speak, but only a choked sob came out. Liv, what's wrong? Are you crying? What happened? Sophie's tone shifted instantly from cheerful to alarmed. Did he not get it? Tell me what happened. He got it. Olivia whispered, her voice hoarse and broken. He got the promotion. Okay. So what's wrong, Liv? You're scaring me. Taking a shaky breath, Olivia forced the words out. I went to his office, Soph. To surprise him, like we talked about. I brought champagne. She trailed off another sob, threatening to overwhelm her, and Sophie prompted gently. What happened at the office? He wasn't alone. Olivia said the words, tasting like ash. He was with someone, Jessica Monroe, from his team. There was a moment of silence on the other end of the line as Sophie processed this. Okay, maybe it was professional. Late night work, tying up loose ends. He was kissing her. Sophie Olivia finally wailed the confession, unleashing a fresh torrent of tears. He was kissing her like he loves her. And I just stood there and watched, a sharp intake of breath followed by a string of curses from Sophie. That son of a bitch. That absolute bastard. Olivia, I am so sorry. Oh my God. Where are you now? I'm home. He's on his way. He texted me. He said he loves me." The words came out in a bitter, hysterical laugh. "Okay, listen to me." Sophie's voice was firm, a lifeline in the storm. "You do not have to see him tonight. You hear me pack a bag? Come to my place. Right now. We'll figure this out tomorrow, but you cannot be there when he walks through that door." "I can't," Olivia whispered. "I can't move. My legs feel like lead." "Yes, you can. You are the strongest person I know. Get up. Go to your closet and put some things in a bag. I'm leaving my apartment right now. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Do not talk to him. Do not see him. Just get in your car and come to me or wait for me to get there. Promise me, Liv." "Okay." She whispered the word barely audible. "Okay." Hanging up the phone, Olivia felt a tiny flicker of resolve. Sophie was right. She couldn't face him. Not tonight. Not while the image of his betrayal was burned onto the back of her eyelids. She needed to escape the stage before the lead actor came home for his final, fraudulent performance. Dragging herself upstairs, she pulled an overnight bag from the closet, her movements slow and robotic. She was no longer a wife planning a celebration. She was a refugee fleeing the ruins of her own life. The 20 minutes it took for Sophie to arrive felt like a lifetime. Olivia moved through her bedroom in a daze, pulling clothes from drawers and hangers at random. A silk blouse she'd worn on their anniversary dinner. The comfortable sweater Daniel loved to see her in. Each item was a memory, a tiny, sharp shard of a life that was no longer real. Her hands froze on the velvet box containing the watch. With a surge of bitter anger, she shoved it to the back of her closet, burying it under a pile of scarves. He would never see it. He would never know. Just as she zipped the bag, she heard the crunch of tires in the driveway. It wasn't Sophie's small coupe. It was the familiar guttural roar of Daniel's sports sedan. Panic, cold and sharp, seized her. He was early. He was home. There was no escape. Her mind raced. She couldn't let him see the bag. She couldn't let him see her tear-streaked face. Her flight instinct was warring with a new, colder feeling that was beginning to crystallize in the pit of her stomach, a morbid curiosity. She wanted to see him. She wanted to see how he would act, how he would lie to her face. She shoved the overnight bag under the bed and rushed to the bathroom, splashing her face with more cold water, trying to erase the evidence of her breakdown. She took deep, shuddering breaths, forcing a fragile calm over the raging storm inside her. "You can do this," she told herself. "You can pretend. For a few hours, for a night." She had to. She wasn't ready for the confrontation. She wasn't ready for the world to end officially. She needed time. She heard the front door open, followed by his cheerful call. "Liv, I'm home." Taking one last look at her pale, strained face in the mirror, Olivia composed her features into a mask of placid welcome and walked out of the bedroom. Daniel was standing in the foyer, shrugging off his expensive coat. He looked flushed with victory, his eyes bright, his smile wide and confident. He was handsome, charismatic, and the sight of him sent a fresh wave of pain through her. He looked like the man she loved, but he was a stranger. "There you are," he said, his smile widening as he saw her. He strode forward and wrapped her in a hug, pressing a kiss to her forehead. His suit smelled of expensive cologne and faintly a perfume that wasn't hers. The scent, a delicate floral note, made her stomach clench. It was the smell of Jessica. Olivia forced herself not to recoil. She stood stiffly in his embrace, her body a block of ice. "Hey," she said, her voice sounding thin and reedy to her own ears. "Congratulations, Mr. Senior Vice President. I'm so proud of you." She pulled back before he could feel the frantic, betrayed thumping of her heart. "We did it, babe. We finally did it." he said, his eyes shining. He was oblivious, completely, utterly oblivious. God, the look on Henderson's face, it was priceless. You should have seen it. I should have seen a lot of things, she thought bitterly. Albright's taking me to Chicago next week to meet the board. This is it. Everything we've worked for. He ran a hand through his hair, buzzing with a restless energy. I'm sorry about tonight. The drinks were unavoidable. All the sycophants came out of the woodwork. It's okay, she said, the lie tasting like acid on her tongue. We can celebrate this weekend. I've already made plans. That's my girl, always one step ahead. He pulled a bottle of whiskey from the bar cart. Want one, I need to wind down. No, I'm good. She just wanted him to stop talking, to stop smiling, to stop acting like everything was perfect. He poured himself a generous measure and sank onto the sofa, loosening his tie. It was a brutal day. Final presentations, then the long wait in Albright's office. Jessica was a rock star, by the way. She caught a potential error in the quarterly projections right before we went in. Honestly, I couldn't have sealed this without her. I owe her big time. He said her name. He said her name so casually, so easily, right here in their living room. Olivia felt the blood drain from her face. She gripped the back of a nearby armchair, her knuckles turning white, convinced she was going to faint. He was praising the woman he had been kissing not 2 hours ago. The audacity, the sheer, unmitigated gall of it was staggering. That's great, she managed to choke out. Her phone buzzed on the coffee table. It was a series of frantic texts from Sophie. Sophie, Liv, where are you, Sophie? His car is there. Did you leave? Are you okay? Sophie, answer me. Daniel glanced at the phone. Who's that? Just Sophie, Olivia said, quickly snatching the phone before he could see the screen. She's asking about my new project. She typed a hasty reply. At home. He's here. Can't talk. I'm okay. We'll explain later. She sent the message and put the phone on silent, her heart pounding. It was a close call. A glimpse of Sophie's frantic messages, and her carefully constructed facade would have crumbled. Daniel didn't seem to notice her distress. He was too wrapped up in his own triumph. He continued to recount the day's events in excruciating detail, oblivious to her monosyllabic responses and the deadness in her eyes. It was a masterful performance of a loving husband returning home to his supportive wife. And Olivia found herself playing her part, the supportive wife, with a chilling proficiency she never knew she possessed. She nodded. She smiled faintly. She said, "Wow, and that's amazing at all the right moments." Inside, she was cataloguing everything. The new, expensive-looking tie clip she didn't recognize, the faint lipstick smudge on his collar that was only visible when he turned his head, just so, a pale pink, not her shade of red. The way he kept his own phone, face down on the table beside him, something he never used to do. Each detail was a nail in the coffin of their marriage. He wasn't just a cheater. He was a careless one. He was so confident in her trust, so secure in her naivety, that he didn't even bother to cover his tracks properly. The thought didn't make her feel better. It made her feel more foolish, more profoundly humiliated. Later, as they got ready for bed, the pretense became almost unbearable. He hummed a cheerful tune while brushing his teeth. He slid into bed and reached for her, his arm draping casually over her waist. "Long day," he murmured into her hair. But a good one. The best one. Olivia lay rigid in the dark, every muscle screaming. She felt his warm breath on her neck and wanted to tear herself away. How many times had he come home to her from a tryst with Jessica? How many times had he laid beside her like this, his mind filled with another woman? The intimacy of their bedroom, their bed felt violated, tainted. She feigned sleep, regulating her breathing into a slow, even rhythm until she heard his own breathing deepen into a genuine slumber. Only then did she allow the silent tears to fall, soaking her pillow. She was sleeping next to the enemy, trapped in the ruins of her life, and for the first time, she wasn't just heartbroken. She was furious. And in that cold, quiet rage, a new resolve took root. She wasn't going to just cry and run away. She was going to find out everything. The weekend that was supposed to be a celebration became Olivia's clandestine investigation. Daniel, buoyed by his success, was in a magnanimous mood. He suggested they go out for their celebratory dinner on Saturday night at Trattoria Valenti, the very place she had planned for them. The irony was so thick she could have choked on it. She agreed, playing the part of the doting wife, while her mind worked like a forensic accountant, searching for discrepancies in the ledger of their life. Her first opportunity came on Saturday morning. Daniel announced he was going for a long run, a new habit he'd picked up to de-stress. As soon as the front door closed, Olivia sprang into action. Her first target was his briefcase, which he'd uncharacteristically left on the desk in their home office. Her hands trembled as she unlatched it. It felt like a profound violation of privacy, but the events of the past 48 hours had obliterated any such scruples. Inside were files, a laptop, and his wallet. She ignored the work documents and went straight for the wallet. Tucked behind his driver's license and credit cards was a small folded receipt. It was from a jewelry store called Boutique d'Amour, a place known for its delicate modern pieces. The date was from 3 weeks ago. The item purchased a single gold pendant, an initial JA. The price made her gasp over $900. It wasn't a corporate gift. It was personal, intimate. A sick feeling coiled in her stomach. She pictured that J pendant tour resting on Jessica's skin as Daniel kissed her. Next, the laptop. She knew his password. It was their wedding anniversary. The predictability of it was almost laughable. She opened his web browser. The history had been cleared recently, a red flag in itself, but he had forgotten about the cloud-synced tabs on his work account. There it was, a search history, filled with bookings for boutique hotels in their own city. The Hemlock Inn, the Chamberlain Suite. They were for out-of-town clients. He had told her an excuse for why he had to stay in the city overnight after a late meeting. It was all a lie. The worst discovery came when she logged into their shared phone plan account online, a task she usually handled. She pulled up the detailed billing statements for the past 6 months. Her eyes scanned down the list of Daniel's calls and texts. There was one number that appeared with startling, damning frequency. Dozens of texts a day. Phone calls late at night, some lasting over an hour, on dates he had told her he was stuck on a conference call with the Singapore office. She looked up the number. It was registered to Jessica Monroe. The timeline was the most devastating part. The constant communication had started 6 months ago. 6 months. Olivia's mind reeled back. What was happening 6 months ago? Her blood ran cold. It was the month after her miscarriage. The memory was a fresh agony. After years of putting it off for his career, they had finally decided to try for a baby. They had been overjoyed when she'd gotten pregnant, only to have their hopes dashed 8 weeks later. It had shattered her. Daniel had been supportive, or so she'd thought. He held her while she cried, told her they would get through it, that they would try again when the time was right. But now, looking at these phone records, she realized that while she was grieving the loss of their child, he was starting an affair. He had sought comfort not in her arms, but in another woman's bed. This new knowledge was a different kind of pain. It was deeper, more corrosive than the shock of seeing the kiss. The kiss was a betrayal of their present. This was a betrayal of their deepest, most vulnerable past. He hadn't just cheated on his wife. He had abandoned his partner in her darkest hour. The grief she felt for their lost baby was now tangled up with a profound, soul-crushing sense of deception. She kept digging a woman possessed. She found the credit card statements. The jewelry store charge was there, along with dozens of others she couldn't explain. Charges for flowers delivered to a downtown address. Extravagant dinners for two at restaurants he'd claimed he visited with clients. Lingerie from a high-end store she had never shopped at. He had been funding a whole separate life, a secret relationship with their joint money. The final piece of the puzzle clicked into place when she accessed his cloud photo storage, a place he probably thought was secure. Tucked away in a folder, mislabeled Q4 projections, she found them. Photos. Dozens of them. Selfies of Daniel and Jessica, smiling in a hotel room, Jessica wearing the J pendant. A photo of them clinking wine glasses on a sun-drenched terrace that he had claimed was from a solo work retreat. A picture of her sleeping in a bed, her dark hair fanned out on a pillow that wasn't from their home. He looked happy in the photos. Genuinely, uncomplicatedly happy. It was a look she hadn't seen on his face in years. He wasn't the stressed, burdened man he was at home. He was carefree, infatuated. He wasn't just having a sordid affair. He was in love with her. Olivia stared at the screen, her heart a block of ice in her chest. The woman in the pictures wasn't just a colleague. She was his partner in every sense of the word except legally. Olivia was the one with the ring and the mortgage, but Jessica was the one who had his heart. When Daniel returned from his run, sweaty and invigorated, Olivia was sitting on the sofa, her face a calm, placid mask. She had closed all the tabs, put the receipt back in his wallet, and hidden the storm of evidence behind a firewall in her mind. "Hey," he said, kissing the top of her head. "Ready for a great day?" "Absolutely," she replied, her voice smooth as glass. "I can't wait for tonight." He saw a wife ready to celebrate. He had no idea he was looking at a judge who had already seen all the evidence and was merely waiting for the right moment to deliver the sentence. The performance was no longer about self-preservation. It was now about strategy. She would let him have his celebration. She would sit through the dinner, listen to his lies and smile. She would let him believe he had gotten away with everything. The confrontation would not be a tearful, hysterical scene. It would be a cold, calculated demolition, and she would be the one holding the detonator. Saturday night arrived heavy with unspoken truths. Olivia wore a stunning black dress, one Daniel had always loved. She applied her makeup with a surgeon's precision, creating an illusion of elegance and calm that was a world away from the turmoil raging within her. As she looked at her reflection, she saw a stranger looking back, a woman with eyes that held a new, hard glitter. The soft, trusting wife was gone, replaced by someone she didn't yet know. Daniel was effusive, preening in his success. He complimented her dress, her hair, the way she looked at him. "Tonight is for us. Live," he said, taking her hand as they walked into Trattoria Valente, a toast to the future. The dinner was a surreal piece of theatre. The restaurant, once their special place, felt like a courtroom. Daniel ordered their favorite wine and launched into an eloquent monologue about their journey, his gratitude for her support and his excitement for the life they were about to build. He was charming, persuasive, and utterly fraudulent. Olivia listened, nodding and smiling at the appropriate cues. She asked questions about his new role, about the Chicago trip, about the people he would be managing. With each lie he told, each omission he made, she felt a strange sense of detachment, as if she were watching a movie about someone else's life. He talked about integrity and hard work being the cornerstones of his success. The hypocrisy was so profound, it was almost comical. When their main courses arrived, she decided it was time. She waited for him to finish a bite of his veal parmesan. then placed her fork down gently on her plate. "I found a receipt in your briefcase yesterday," she said, her voice quiet but carrying a deadly precision, "from a place called Boutique d'Amour." Daniel froze his fork halfway to his mouth. A flicker of something panic maybe crossed his face before being replaced by a mask of casual confusion. Oh, that it was a corporate gift. For one of the clients on the project. You know how it is. A corporate gift. Olivia tilted her head. A gold pendant with the initial J. That seems rather personal for a client, don't you think? His composure started to crack. He put his fork down. "Listen, Liv, it's complicated. It was for Jessica. She was instrumental to the project's success. It was a thank you bonus, a gesture. A $900 gesture," Olivia said, her voice remaining level. "Just like the flowers you sent to her downtown apartment, or the dinners at Le Ciel Bleu, were those all thank you bonuses as well." The color drained from Daniel's face. He looked around the restaurant, his eyes darting nervously. "What are you talking about? Where is this coming from? Don't insult my intelligence." "Daniel," she said, her voice dropping to a steely whisper, "don't you dare. I saw you. Thursday night, in your new office. I came to surprise you." The confession hung in the air between them, thick and suffocating. Daniel's face crumbled. The confident senior vice president vanished, replaced by a cornered, guilty man. He opened his mouth, then closed it, no lies readily available to save him now. "Liv, I can explain," he stammered. "Can you?" she asked, a humorless smile touching her lips. "Can you explain the hotel rooms, the Chamberlain suite, the Hemlock Inn? Were those for out-of-town clients too? Or were you the out-of-town client in your own city? Can you explain the hundreds of texts, the late-night phone calls, the photos, Daniel, the ones in the folder labeled Q4 projections? You look so happy in them." She laid out the evidence piece by piece, a calm, relentless prosecutor. With every detail she recited, he seemed to shrink, the weight of his deceit crushing him. He slumped in his chair, the fight draining out of him. "I'm so sorry, Olivia," he whispered, his voice thick with a pathetic self-pity. "I never meant to hurt you. It just happened. The pressure at work, the miscarriage. I was lost. She understood." The mention of the miscarriage was the final straw. Olivia's icy composure finally fractured, and a hot, white-hot rage surged through her. "Don't you dare!" she hissed, leaning across the table, her voice dangerously low. "Don't you dare use the loss of our child as an excuse for you to crawl into another woman's bed. While I was grieving, you were starting an affair. While I was trying to put our family back together, you were building a new one with her." She understood. What did she understand? Daniel. That you were a coward, that you couldn't handle real life, real pain, so you ran to something easy and new. He flinched as if she had slapped him. "It's not like that. It's complicated." "No, it's not, Olivia," said her voice regaining its cold clarity. "It's very, very simple. You're a liar and a cheat, and you've destroyed everything we built. We can fix this," he pleaded, reaching for her hand. I'll end it right now. It was a mistake, a stupid, terrible mistake. It's you I love, Liv. It's always been you." Olivia looked at his desperate, pleading face, and she felt nothing. No love, no pity, just a vast, empty wasteland where her heart used to be. She pulled her hand away. "Is that what you told her? What, that it was a mistake?" "That you love me," Olivia pressed, "because a woman doesn't stick around for 6 months for a man who says he loves his wife." "So what did you tell her, Daniel? That you were going to leave me after the promotion was secured? that we were already over. He couldn't meet her eyes. His silence was her answer. "I thought so," she said softly. She took a sip of her wine, the liquid tasteless on her tongue. It was time for the final devastating blow. This was the one piece of information she didn't have but was about to gamble on. A woman's intuition, a cold guess based on the timeline. "There's one more thing you should know. Daniel." She began watching him closely. "Before you make any more empty promises. I got a call this morning from a rather distraught woman. It seems she found my number and was having a bit of a crisis. Apparently her period is late." Daniel's head snapped up, his eyes wide, with pure, unadulterated horror. The blood completely drained from his face, leaving him a ghastly shade of grey. His reaction told her everything. Her wild guess had hit its mark. "She's pregnant, isn't she?" Olivia stated it not as a question, but as a fact. The final damning piece of his betrayal. Daniel stared at her, his mouth opening and closing like a fish, utterly speechless. He had not only given another woman his heart, he had given her the child they had lost. Olivia slowly placed her napkin on the table. She stood up, her movements graceful and deliberate. The entire restaurant seemed to fade away, the other patrons and waiters nothing more than blurred background figures. It was just the two of them at the scene of the crime. "Congratulations on all your success, Daniel," she said, her voice devoid of all emotion. "It seems you have a new future to build after all." And with that, she turned and walked away, leaving him sitting alone amidst the ruins of their 10-year marriage, with a bill to pay for a celebration that had become a funeral. Olivia did not go back to the house in Maple Creek. She drove straight to Sophie's apartment, a small, cozy space that felt more like a sanctuary than her own sprawling, empty house ever had. When Sophie opened the door, she took one look at Olivia's face, a mask of grim victory and profound exhaustion, and pulled her into a fierce hug. Olivia didn't cry. She was beyond tears. She simply leaned into her friend's embrace, letting her strength hold her up. She spent the next few days in a state of suspended animation, moving through the motions of life on autopilot. She called her parents and told them a sanitized version of the truth. "We're separating. It's for the best," fending off their worried questions with a weariness that brooked no argument. The true work began on Monday morning. Instead of wallowing in her grief, Olivia channeled her fury into action. She found the name of the most tenacious, sharp-witted divorce lawyer in the city, a woman named Catherine Vance, known for being both compassionate with her clients and a shark in the courtroom. Walking into Ms. Vance's sleek, minimalist office was the first step toward reclaiming her life. Olivia recounted the entire story from the planned surprise to the final devastating confrontation at the restaurant. She spoke with a calm, factual detachment, presenting the timeline of the affair and the evidence she had gathered, the receipts, the hotel bookings, the phone records, as if she were a witness in someone else's case. Catherine Vance listened patiently, her expression unreadable. When Olivia finished, the lawyer leaned forward, a look of steely resolve in her eyes. "Mrs. Peterson," she said, her voice firm but kind, "you have been through an unimaginable betrayal. Daniel's infidelity, particularly its timing, and the blatant use of marital assets to fund it, is not just morally reprehensible, it's leverage. We are not going to ask for a fair settlement. We are going to demand a just one." For the first time in days, Olivia felt a flicker of something other than pain or anger. It was hope. The next call was to Daniel. He had been bombarding her with texts and voicemails, filled with frantic apologies, desperate pleas and hollow promises. She had ignored them all. When he answered, his voice was a wreck, thick with desperation. "Liv, oh God, Liv, please, just talk to me. We can fix this. I'll do anything." "There is nothing to fix, Daniel," Olivia said, her voice cold and final. "I have retained a lawyer. Her name is Catherine Vance. Her office will be in touch with you or your legal counsel to begin divorce proceedings." No, please don't do this," he begged. "It was a mistake. I love you. You are going to be a father, Daniel," she stated flatly, cutting through his pleas. "Your responsibility is to that child now. My only communication with you from this point forward will be through our lawyers regarding the division of our assets." She heard a sharp intake of breath, then a choked sob. For a moment, she felt a pang of something, the ghost of the love she once had for him. But it was fleeting. The man she had loved wouldn't have been capable of such profound deceit. That man was gone if he had ever truly existed at all. "Goodbye, Daniel," she said, and hung up before he could reply. With that single action, a decade of her life came to a definitive end. In the weeks that followed, Olivia dismantled her old life with the same meticulous care with which she had once built it. Guided by her lawyer, she began the arduous process of untangling their finances. She packed up her personal belongings from the house in Maple Creek, moving with a small team of movers during a time she knew Daniel would be at work. Walking through the rooms for the last time, she felt a strange sense of peace. It was no longer her home. It was a museum of a life that was over, and she was ready to leave. She found a new apartment in the city, a bright, airy space with a small balcony overlooking a park. It was smaller than her old house, but it was hers. She filled it not with memories of the past, but with promises for the future, new furniture, vibrant art, and shelves of books she had always meant to read. She poured her energy into her work, taking on new, challenging clients and rediscovering the passion for design that had been overshadowed by her role as a supportive wife. She learned through the legal proceedings that Jessica had indeed been pregnant, and that she and Daniel were trying to build a life together. The news, which once would have shattered her, now barely registered. They were characters in a story that no longer involved her. Their future was their own tangled web to navigate. One crisp autumn morning, months later, Olivia stood on her new balcony, a cup of coffee warming her hands. The sun was rising, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. It was a new day. She was not the same woman who had planned a surprise party full of hope and love. She was stronger, wiser, and more resilient. The betrayal had left scars deep and permanent, but they were no longer open wounds. They were reminders of what she had survived. She had walked through the fire of the worst kind of heartbreak and had emerged from the ashes, not unscathed, but whole. Her future was a blank canvas, and for the first time in a very long time, she was the only artist with the brush. Thank you for joining us on this emotional journey. Olivia's story is a powerful reminder that sometimes the life we plan is not the life we are meant to live, and that the deepest betrayals can sometimes lead to our greatest rebirths. It shows us that strength isn't about never falling. It's about how we rise after we've been pushed to the ground. If you were moved by Olivia's resilience and her fight for a new beginning, please show your support. Hit that like button to let us know this story resonated with you, and share it with someone who might need to hear a story of survival and hope. And most importantly, if you want more compelling stories like this one, make sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the notification bell. You won't want to miss what we have in store. Until next time, take care of yourselves and each other.